New tonight, Gregg County has agreed to be part of the Northeast Texas Groundwater Conservation District. That is, if the district is formed. As KLTV7's Jamie Boyum reports, today an Austin attorney made a presentation to the Gregg County Commissioners Court.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes.
And with that vote, Gregg County agreed to be part of the Northeast Texas Groundwater Conservation District if and when it is formed. Austin attorney Brian Sledge has agreed to spearhead forming the conservation district to manage water resources.
Outside of a groundwater conservation district under Texas law, it's just the rule of the biggest pump, the rule of capture, and so the entity available under Texas law for managing the drilling and operating of wells is a groundwater conservation district.
He says the district would take control of Northeast Texas groundwater resources. He adds that Northeast Texas is one of the only big areas in the state that has plenty of groundwater, but no entity in control of who takes it.
Other water supplies and our fast-growing economy, low-hanging fruit have been taken up already. Folks are starting to look over here at these groundwater resources in East Texas.
Gregg County Judge Bill Stout says it's something the commissioners have been talking about for about 8 months.
We're really opening ourselves up to having no defense or control of the water underneath us.
Sledge says landowners presently control who can take groundwater, similar to the oil business.
You want to take this action before there's an imminent threat to groundwater resources. Just a matter of time before folks start showing up here in droves in an area of the state that has rich groundwater resources, but no management of them.
Jamie Boyum, KLTV 7 News.
Now, this proposal would help at least 16 East Texas counties have some level of control over their groundwater.